Well, cool. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Greg Cattrano, one of the most, I would say, successful, most accomplished goaltenders in the history of our sport. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Damon. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're able to do this. I always start back at the very beginning. Now, you and me are a little bit older. I don't know if you if you remember it, but do you remember the first time you actually jumped into goal?
I actually do. I was 8 years old. I remember my father needed a goalie for a game. He was the coach. And I guess one of the goalies didn't show up to play. And, my dad's the coach. He wasn't going to throw someone else's son in the goal. So he decided, hey, you're going to play goal today. And I remember it was I was playing the Three Village program, Ward Medville, feeds into Ward Medville High School. And we were playing Garden City, another powerhouse program. And I got a shutout. I think it was 8-0 the score. I can't remember if I actually made any saves, but I still got a shutout. So, but that was the first time. So it was a good experience.
I love it. A shutout in your very first start in goal. So to set a little context, like you grew up on Long Island, right? Kind of a lacrosse hotbed, and you're jumping in there at 8 years old. Did you have any instruction, or it's just kind of here's the gear, get in there and figure it out?
Oh yeah, I mean, lots of instruction coming from the Three Village program. Countless number of coaches who really started the program a long time ago, back in the 70s and into the 80s when I started. But I do remember the first time I stepped into a gym for a clinic, and I wasn't playing goalie at the time. I actually, a bunch of coaches there, some college players. From North Carolina that graduated from, great group of people. And I remember they threw me a ground ball and I didn't scoop it up, right? I couldn't scoop it. Okay. So I tried again. They rolled it out, tried to scoop it up again. Couldn't do it. Third time I scooped it and then threw a shot on the goal, empty net, and ball went in. Ran out of the gym crying. I swore I would never play the sport again to my dad, because I was like embarrassed. I didn't want anything to do with it at that point. But obviously,
why? Like you scored the goal, or someone scored on you?
No, I scored.
Oh.
And I was just, after the first couple of times of failing and not pick it up, I'm playing baseball. One of those things, right?
Yeah.
Because my dad wanted me to try lacrosse, and I was a baseball guy. At 8 years old, right? What do I know?
Yeah, right.
But he knew my path. So
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. 8 years old, I mean, I think I grew up in California in the 90s, and I was playing soccer and baseball and no lacrosse, but yeah, what do you know as a kid at that age? It's tough. It's tough. Well, awesome. So then you're kind of, from 8 years old, where does it go from there? Do you transition more into full-time goalie? Are you still splitting time between, playing midi, or how did your path go?
I was playing a little midi attack, goalie, and then I played that one game in goal, and I kind of just stuck with it. Right, I felt like I have a good feel. Growing up, I have an older brother, 3 years older than me. He found that he had someone to shoot on now, right? So, yeah. I'm 8, 9, 10 years old. He's 3 years older, so this is like a dream come true. We go into the yard, a couple of lacrosse balls, goal. Just he has someone to shoot on. Of course, he's shooting right at me as opposed to trying to hit the net. He's just trying to hurt me, right? And if there's no balls, he's throwing rocks at me. And no joke, he was throwing rocks. And for me, I'm like, I'm not backing down to my brother here, right? I'm going to save everything he throws my way, even if it's multiple rocks at the same time. And fortunately, I was, and I really got into it. It was that challenge, right? And that's what made me love the position even more. And that's what really got me going. So I owe a lot to my brother, just early on in my career. When I say like 9, 10 years old, like he helped develop me by really pushing me and challenging me to stop him, right? And it put me into that kind of aggressive mindset early on, and such. And I remember all of it. It's one of those things. You don't remember much from when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, but I remember being in the yard and having some, my brother pick not just one rock, a bunch of rocks, and just throw them at me. He was just mad at me that day. But it was like, I'm not going to back down. And I think that really framed my aggressive thinking to the position at such an early age. And I just wanted to continue with it.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a common story for lacrosse goalies. I posted something a long time ago, and it's like there's basically three reasons people become a goalie. And the number one was like they have an older brother or an older sister who wants somebody to shoot on. That's like the number one reason. But you also, like that scenario, you also become a great goalie. I talked to, Megan Taylor, who won the Tewaaraton on the women's side, and it was the same thing. Like her brother wanted somebody to shoot on. Hey, Megan, get in the goal. And then, because you're constantly trying to get better, constantly working with your sibling, like you end up becoming a really great goalie. Wouldn't you agree?
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it wasn't for my brother, I honestly, I credit him with everything. If it wasn't for him and just countless days being in the yard, challenging me, for hours, I probably wouldn't have lasted as a goalie. Honestly, I think I might have played another position. I loved the sport back then, even, 10, 11. I was still in love with the sport at that point, but I probably would not have played goalie. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your brother took 10 shots at 12 yards, how many is he scoring today?
So I'm 45. He's 48. He's not scoring any.
I love it. I love it.
He's not scoring, and he knows it too. He'd give you the same number.
Yeah, zero.
Most likely he'll just throw him right at me anyway.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Well, cool. So you and your brother are kind of working in the backyard. As you think about like going into junior high, going into high school, like was there a certain moment where everything just clicked, or was it one camp or one season where, hey, I really kind of figured out this goalie position, or do you think it was just kind of a natural sort of linear progression and how you got better?
Mostly a linear progression. Just such early. I was working hard from the beginning. I wanted to play the position when I realized that's what I wanted to do, and I just continued to work hard. Then getting into middle school, I remember Murphy Junior High School, 7th grade. Trying out for the team, and then really, I think that one year I think I led like 2 goals all year long over like 9 games, and just felt like just was in love with the position. Great teammates too. Like it was great to be around other players that I was growing up with who had a passion for the sport as well. So it was kind of one of those things, like we were always together and always playing. So it really helped develop my own game. I wanted to be a part of it, because they made some tremendous friendships through it, and still friends with a lot of players. I played with in 7th and 8th and 9th grade. Right. So, that helped develop my own game because we were all working together. And that was part of the whole culture of the 3 Village and Ward Medville program. Right. Everybody worked together from such a young age. So when they get to the pinnacle, the Ward Medville High School, like 10th, 11th, 12th grade, right. You've already been playing together for years. So, and you got to know everyone's tendencies and enjoyed playing with one another. So but for me, it was more of a linear progression, just continue to improve each year.
Yeah. I guess if you're coming from a background of having your brother throw rocks at you, sometimes multiple rocks, you're not so afraid of the lacrosse ball as it's coming. Because a lot of kids, when they start out at that age, like you see it all the time, right? Like, you kind of duck a little bit, you kind of have a hitch as the ball comes. So I imagine that wasn't a part of your game, and that allowed you to, I don't know, see the ball and just use your natural reflexes, right?
Yeah, I learned early, like it was more of a mental thing for me that I really developed early on. Like, the natural thing is to be afraid of getting hit with a lacrosse ball because, I might feel the pain or it might give me a bruise, right? And that's natural to think, no one likes to get hurt, right? However, I looked as I wanted, of course I wanted to save the ball by stick, but I wanted to make the save. So I was not afraid for it to hit my body, whether in practice or games, because I knew I was making a save. So I had this mindset, and it's kind of, people call us crazy as goalies, right? But I think everyone else is crazy for not playing. But I try to hurt the ball, right? Like I wanted to be as aggressive as possible. I wanted that ball leaving the field hurting. Like that ball was going to go through some pain because I was going to stop it every single time. Right. Yeah. And that's the mental aspect that I brought to it, that aggressive mindset. And that carried me through middle school into high school, college, professional. Like I was going to make sure I was attacking that ball. That's how I played. Very aggressive. When I wasn't playing well, I was not attacking. I was letting the ball play me. I was letting the ball hurt me in a way, so no, early on, I just wasn't, I never feared it at all. It was just one of those, things. Yeah, if someone threw a ball at me right now, I'd probably kind of maybe duck away a little bit. But back then it was like, bring it on, man. It's no different. You look at it like, if you throw me, back then you throw me in the goal, someone throws a lacrosse ball, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to attack it. That's my natural tendency, right? That's what I want to do. You throw like an attackman or a midi or defenseman into the goal and you fire a 90-mile-per-hour shot at them. What are they going to do? They're mostly going to move out of the way. Right. I mean, that's their natural tendency. Right. So us goalies have to think a lot differently.
Yeah, we're a little bit crazy. But hearing that you wanted to hurt the lacrosse ball takes the crazy level to a level that we have not seen on this podcast. And I love it. I got to admit, I love it. That's awesome.
I wish there was a possibility of knocking the cover off a lacrosse ball, but that wasn't possible. So if it was possible, I would have done it.
Yeah. What do you say to a kid that is struggling with that fear response? Because obviously, that mentality, that mindset, it's tough to learn, right? It's not like you can hear Greg Cattrano say, oh, you need to attack the ball or you need to hurt the ball and then instantly go out on the field and be like, cool, I got it now. So what do you say to a young kid that is struggling with that?
It's repetition. It's, over and over, and get used to seeing that ball coming at you. Mm-hmm. Get used to it. It doesn't have to be hitting you. It's just it's going into your stick, just over and over and over again. And, I tell all these goalies that I've trained in my career, look at the ball, watch the ball. Okay. If you watch the ball, it will look bigger. Okay. And it will look bigger to you. It'll move slower. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know why, but the more you focus on it, it's just focus, and it's going to look bigger. It's going to look slower, and it's not going to be as scary. It's when goalies aren't getting the repetition, or when they're not focused on the ball, they're focused on other things, or they just don't have, they're just not focused that one day in practice or a game. That's when the ball seems to be moving a lot faster. Mm-hmm. Goalies playing more back on their heels. They're just not seeing the ball. And, it's one of those things. Oh, I didn't see the ball today. Well, you know why you didn't see it? Because you weren't looking at it. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, that's how, why did it look so big? Well, because you were looking at it. That's it. It takes that focus, but it's repetition over and over and over again. And you start to see it. It just becomes natural to you. Like the example I gave with the attackman. If they're not seeing the ball coming at them, thousands and thousands of times, they're just going to jump out of the way. They're going to be afraid. But if they would have seen it over and over, their natural reaction would be, oh, I want to try to stop it. I won't be as afraid, right? So it's repetition.
Yeah, I love that. And focus and extreme focus. I think a lot of goalies underestimate the level of focus that you need to maintain for an entire game or an entire practice. It's just this extreme level of focus where I am so locked in. And like you said, the moment you start thinking about, the cute girls or what I got to do at school or what I got, anything else besides focusing on that ball is the moment when those shots, like you said, start to pick up 10 to 12 miles per hour. They start to seem faster and you're not seeing it. So it's just this extreme level of focus.
I was more mentally drained after games than physically.
Yeah.
Mentally, I had time to recover more than physically. And I was active. Okay.
Yeah.
Very physical in the goal. Right. But mentally it was a draining, the tougher. I mean, I was just like, I think I walk a field. You can't even speak to me. I couldn't even, I was just so mentally, I just need to go. It's not like I can go fall asleep because I was so worked up. Right. It was just more of those, I needed time to recover mentally because I was just so focused on the entire game and watching the ball that it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. But that's something I was able to really, master is the focus of the position.
Love it. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So, and the repetition piece, I love too, because the unique thing about lacrosse is there's just so many types of shots that you can see. I mean, if you think about like how a shooter can release, it's almost like infinite possibilities. Like, I can release here and shoot down. I can release low and shoot up. I can, there's just so many options, but the more shots that you see, the more times you can say, okay, I've seen that shot. You know what I mean? So I think it's just repetition. And a goalie emailed me the other week and was like, I don't really like practice. I don't like seeing shots in practice. To which I say, like, this might not be the right position for you. Cause like as a goalie, you have to love seeing shots. That's what we do. Right.
Right. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have practice. I sometimes I wouldn't, playing the professional league, I go through practice and a little bit tougher to focus in practice because it's hard to get up to that level like you would at games.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I wasn't focused as much, but I was still seeing the shots, right? I was still getting the repetition, and I would probably be letting a lot more in than I would like. But at the same time, I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah.
I was like, why? This is good for me. I'm seeing the shots. I'm seeing it. It's coming at me. I'm still, even at like at the end of my career, I wanted to see more shots and like I said, practice, if they went in or not, I wasn't getting down on myself. We're in practice. I'm training right now, right? It's now, okay, when I get into the game, I've already seen this, right? So when I'm a little more focused in that game, I'll be able to just let my natural instincts take over and it becomes second nature.
Love it.
If you're not seeing the shots in practice, whether they're going in or not, in the goal or not, that's when you really can struggle in the games.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. You talked a little bit about, your style of play. Let's touch on that a little bit. I mean, every goalie's got kind of a different style in terms of, how they set up on the arc. Are they stepping out of 45? Are they stepping lateral? The stance, are you in like kind of a deep squat? Are you more upright, but still, athletic? How do you describe kind of your style of play, Greg?
Athletic. If anything, I was more athletic. Nothing. I wasn't up high. I wasn't down low. I kept my hands, extended away from me, away from my body. I thought that was very important. And every time I would, goalie, there's a misconception. Everyone says, a lot of coaches say, some coaches say, don't step, wait for the ball to get to you. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'll just disagree with it. Right. That's not how I played. But some goalies have success with that. And I think that's great. You have goalie coaches say, oh, you have to step to the ball. Right. I think that's a very passive way to look at it, even if it's stepping, because stepping can be interpreted so many different ways. You could take a nice simple step, 6 inches. You can, step 1 foot, 2 feet. I attacked. Mm-hmm. Okay. I attacked the ball. Okay. And when I practice, and if you ever saw me in warmups, when I would take that first step, if the ball's going to my left side, and I just said step, but if the ball's on my left side, I would attack on my left foot, and my left foot would be outside the crease. Yeah. Okay. And I bring my back foot up, right? And that's how I'd end up in a good square position outside the crease. And you might say, well, you're outside the crease, you make the save, you might get hit. I'm practicing that. That's in warmups. I'm attacking as much as I can because I know when I get in the game, it might be half that, right? But I was getting to the attacking mentality. If I would just sit back, and some goalies have success with it, just wait for the ball to come to it, it works. That's great, right? That would never, ever work for me. Mentally, I'm not built that way. I was built to attack. And again, remember, I'm trying to hurt the ball, right? So I can't let the ball get to me. That's what I like to teach goalies. Just don't stand back. Just don't step. Attack the ball when you see it coming at you. Do it repetition over and over again, right? Yeah. And everyone will look identical. I go through I can take 60 shots in warmups, every save, whether it's high, except the position of the stick, whether it's stick side high, off stick side, low. Like my body was attacking the same exact way. I was ending in the same position that I started in. Ready for, square, ready for the next save. That's just how I approached it.
Yeah, I love it. 100% agree. That's how I coach too. It's kind of, you want to get that body behind the ball. And it does start with the step. So a lot of times, you hear that and you go, all right, step to it. But it doesn't end there. Like you're exploding through the shot, right? Yeah. Like it's not just a simple step, because if you take that one step and then kind of stop there, like you are not exploding through the shot and getting your body behind the ball. So it sounds like we share the same philosophy on that. It's awesome.
Yeah, I would leave my hands away from my body. Like I said, in my starting position, shot would come. I would basically lead with my hands. If anything, I was attacking with my hands, and my feet would follow. Right, that's what would happen. So I'm attacking my entire body, just not my feet. If you were just to take a step, you might step into your hands, right? And then you're getting, the stick might get caught up in your helmet. It gets caught up in here. You don't want that. I always wanted to catch the ball, or block the ball, whatever it might be. If I didn't catch it in my shaft, away from my body. Okay, and by attacking it, and my feet would just naturally follow my hands. You can't attack with your hands and explode towards the ball and keep your feet behind you. That's virtually impossible. We're not Gumby, right? And if you just attack with your feet, you might step into your hands, right? And that's how I approached it.
Yeah, awesome. Growing up in the in the 90s, there obviously wasn't any professional leagues to watch. There wasn't as much lacrosse on TV as there is now. Who were some of the goalies that you learned from?
I'm mostly focused, I guess, in the 90s, even go through the 80s, early 90s, Rich Betcher was a goalie at Ward Medville High School. He played at Towson. I remember Pat Olmert was at North Carolina. A goalie that comes to mind. Some goalies that I follow. I can't say I try to replicate their games because, again, we didn't have much video to watch. You just heard of them maybe through a newspaper article or something. Much different in the late 80s, early 90s, right? When I'm still in high school. Sal Licasio comes to mind as well. But again, wasn't really seeing much, tape of him. I would go to camps. I'd see different goalies from colleges. But if anyone, it was more from my high school that I was going to play because I would see them play. And it's Rich Betcher. He graduated in the late 80s. He's one that I probably saw the most. Anyway.
Yeah, I grew up like you in the no Instagram, no YouTube era. So, we'd get our hands on a VHS copy of the national championship game and just watch that thing on repeat until it broke.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's right.
I love it. Well, cool. So then you get to high school and, by that point, I imagine you've converted fully into goalie. Is that right? Or how'd your high school lacrosse career go?
Yeah, I was a goalie even through middle school. At that point, I made the full transition. And remember, I was a sophomore at Ward Medville High School. This is the days where really only junior and seniors are making the varsity team. But I made the varsity team as a sophomore. I was one of the first ever in the district or the program to as a sophomore to make the varsity team. I did not start that year. It was more, I guess, to get me the experience to step in for when I was a junior. And the junior team we had won the state championship. Very talented team. We were awesome. I think it was. I actually know we played 22 games. I think we let up like 64 goals over the 22 games. We scored like 300 and something.
Yeah.
We had such a great team. I remember, like I said, 22-0. And that was one of the most memorable years of playing lacrosse that I've ever had. It was such a fun time in high school.
That's crazy. Three goals against average. It's not too bad. Huh?
I scored 4 goals that year too.
Nice.
from the goalie position. Yeah.
That's an element that I love about your game is you're not afraid to take matters into your own hands and run into the offensive side. And I think I'm a shorter goalie. I'm 5'8". I think you're probably a little taller, but still on the shorter athletic side. And I love that part about your game.
Yeah.
Love it. So at what point did you start getting looks from colleges, or at what point did you start realizing like, pretty good at making saves. I could probably play this at the next level.
I wasn't. Yeah. Going to where I knew my sophomore year, I wanted to play this in college, but it couldn't really get recognized or contacted from colleges until it was different back then. So until I think it was like July or August going into my senior year. So colleges weren't contact. There was no early commitment. It was just like you're waiting. I think it was July 1st. Mm-hmm. Going into your senior year. So I wasn't talking to any colleges before, even during that junior year. Right. So, but I knew I wanted to play in college, in college. And I was trying to use lacrosse as much of a springboard into college because I wanted to play at the highest level after high school. Right. So I remember getting a bunch of calls, as soon as that open period, started where college coaches can start reaching out. So that was a fun time for me and my family.
Yeah. And you end up going to Brown. What made you choose that program?
So I narrowed it down, early. Well, after going through the recruiting process, I remember I narrowed it down to Brown, Princeton, Loyola, UNC, and UVA. So, all right, I had 5 really good schools that I narrowed it down to play lacrosse at. And UNC was a team I rooted for my entire junior high and high school career. So that was nice. But I then fell into like, wow, I have a really good opportunity, and it's nothing against any other schools. I have an opportunity to go in an Ivy League school, get an Ivy League education. I thought that was really, really neat at the time. I was like, this is a great opportunity. I know I can succeed there. I had good grades. So really narrowed it down to Princeton and Brown, and just the overall fit for me. I just thought I was more comfortable at Brown. I mean, Brown was coming off a really good year. Nothing against Princeton, nothing against the program. Bill Tierney was the coach there. I mean, it would have been, and they were winning national championships back then too. I just felt overall from a academic standpoint and experience standpoint, Brown was a better fit for me and my personality. I really loved the open curriculum they had. It was just a feel, right? I remember though calling Coach Tierney and letting him know I was not going to go to Princeton, and there was about one of the most uncomfortable calls. And I've talked to Coach Tierney. I've gotten to know him over the years several times afterwards. But I could tell you that 30 seconds to a minute that was silent on the call was the most intimidating experience probably of my life. Again, I'm like 17 years old, right? And the only words I think he said were, "You're never going to win a national championship at Brown. You'll only win them at Princeton." Right. And I think he hung up.
Oh no.
So during my 4-year tenure at Brown, Princeton won 3 championships. And he had said, if you went to Princeton, we would have won 4. Yeah. So you screwed me over, Greg.
That's pretty funny. So that had to have been, what year was that? 91?
So I graduated from high school in 93. So my years during the the college season was 94 through 97.
94. Awesome. That's hilarious. It's an uncomfortable call when you got to tell a coach that, you've been through a lot in the recruiting process. You kind of get to know them. They get to know your family. I imagine at that point, like, back in those, did they come to visit your house too?
Well, the head coaches were coming to my house. They were having dinner at my house with the family there for 3 to 4 hours. I mean, Coach Tierney sitting at the dining room table talking to my parents. Great experience. Dom Starger, when he was at Virginia, he was sitting at the table. Peter Lasagna, when Brown, he was there as well. It was just amazing experience to go through that. So you really get to know them on more of a personal level. So it makes that call to say, I'm not going to be attending your school much tougher, but it's really tough with Coach Tierney, Yeah. And I dreaded the call, and it was, he made me feel that.
Yeah.
But I still made the right choice. So I knew I made the right choice, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, talking about that, a lot of kids, stress about the recruiting process. And at the end of the day, like, you know what, if you went to Princeton, you probably would have had a great experience, right? I mean, you went to Brown, you had a great experience. At the end of the day, like, being able to play this great game and getting an elite education, you're doing great, right? So, I think a lot of people panic about like, oh, I'm not getting looks at these schools. I'm not getting looks at that schools. And a lot of my advice is just like, calm down, keep working hard, and it's going to pan out. Like, you're going to end up in a great spot.
Yeah. And it's just the beginning of our lives and our careers, right? It's not the end all be all if you don't get to play for the NCAA team that you've dreamt of playing for, right? It's the entire experience of going through it. And wherever you're recruited or wherever you wind up going, you make it the right experience, right? You go in with an open mindset. This is the best. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to make the best of it, right? And I'm going to flourish here, right? And I'm going to work hard. This is where I want to be. And it's meant to happen that way. It's when, some people, I'm just going to fall back and go to that school. Like, that's just, I don't think that's a good attitude, right? It's going open mind. You're not always going to get recruited by the schools you want to go to, and that's okay. There's a place for all of us.
Yeah. So you get to Brown, and I imagine, now that you're playing at the next level, it's a little bit faster, a little bit quicker. Did you, adjust your goalie game once you got to Brown?
Yeah, I think that's the year I really started. Well, I got into my freshman year. I played behind Jay Stallford, who was a second team All American in 1994. Awesome, talented goalie. So I was able to learn underneath him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, everything was a little bit faster, so I had to adjust my game based on that. And then my sophomore year, I started a few games, and I was still trying to get a grasp of the position in the college level. It's again a lot faster, and I wound up getting benched one game. And then I was no longer the starter. I was a sophomore. There's a junior that was playing ahead of me. Then at that time, so he started like 5 straight games, and it was during that moment when I was on the bench, because this is the first time in my career where I didn't I didn't start my freshman year, because there was there was already an All-American starter. But it's the first time in my career where, well, I could start, but I'm not, right? So how do I learn from this experience right now, right? While I'm not playing. And the one thing I learned is, one, you got to just always, no matter what position you're in, whether you're on the bench playing, you're the same type of teammate, right? You gotta keep an open mindset. You got to support your team and cheer on the other goalie, but always be ready, right? Be ready. We all get knocked down, right? We all have to get back up. And it's what we do when we get back up, right? It's really what we do when we're down, more importantly. Do we just sulk in a corner? Do we just not get up, right? Like, I knew there was going to be an opportunity for me. So I just put myself into the right mindset, support my team, and just be ready to go. And I remember, the other goalie, he was struggling in what turned out to be the Ivy League championship game. It was different back then. We didn't have a championship. It was just a 6-game season. Mm-hmm. We were playing Cornell, and whoever won would win the Ivy League championship. And he wound up getting taken out in the first quarter. And the coach was like, "You're going back in." And I'm like, here's my shot. So it's what I've done the last 5 games to prepare me for this, right? Keep it that open mindset, being ready to go at all times. And I had one of my best games in my college career. And it's funny. I wound up scoring the game-winning goal as a goalie.
Yeah, I love it.
In the Ivy League championship. And from that point on, I learned so much about facing that adversity that I had faced, of being, benched. We all face different things in lives in our career, but that was pretty like, wow, that's pretty adverse for me. But it's battling through that and keeping the right mindset. And then I wound up taking that over, like in any game I approach. Hey, you're going to have tough games, bounce back. You're going to have tough days in life, bounce back, right? And from that point on, I was able to then just to run with my game from then on.
Wow, love it. Great story. Great story. So you mentioned being ready, kind of as like a key theme there. If a goalie is, the number 2 guy or on the bench, just always be ready. What does like practical wise, what does that look like for you? Are you taking shots outside of practice? Is it more of like a mindset thing? How do you get ready?
Honestly, it was more of a mindset. I approached the practices and extra practice the same way as when I was a starter. It's not like I practiced more or less. I didn't try to obsess over it. It was like, I'm just going to keep working hard, because I was already working hard in practice. So I already knew that. And so I knew, like, getting extra repetitions could be good, but I also had to make sure I was mentally strong through all of it, saying, okay, just continue to work hard in your practice with your teammates. Continue to do it. Do not get down. Do not put your head down. Do not lose that focus. And that was the toughest part of it, right? Because again, you're down, right? You're like, in a way, like, I used to be the starter, now I'm not, but I didn't let that bother me, right? It was adversity for me, but I was like, I'm not going to let this bother me. I'm going to be ready. And it was more of the mental side of things. And it's no different than having a bad game. You have to bounce back. And it's, going out, having a bad game, and then, if you're an attack and having a bad game, and then go shoot on a goal, a couple hundred times after the game, might not make you better the next game. But if you just like, okay, I had a bad game. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And mentally handle it and say, okay, let me get to the next game. It's a fresh game again. And approaching, I've been working hard. You'll probably bounce back a lot faster.
Totally. Yeah. I had a sports psychologist on the podcast, and he said this great little phrase, which is it's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. because we're going to have, you know, as goalies, that's what you're talking about. As goalies, we're going to have setbacks, whether that be like giving up a goal, giving up 4 goals in you know, a minute, having a bad game, having a bad practice. So it's not about that loss that you take. It's like, do you recover and get a win, or do you up here mentally take 7 losses in a row? You know what I mean?
But it's the same way facing shots. And, you know, in lacrosse, we're going to, you know, goalies are going to let up 7, 8 goals in a row. Sometimes it's going to happen. And I trained myself every time I let up a goal. This started in college. Take the ball out of the goal, hand it to the official, and bring your defense in. That's it. Every time. Okay. Keep your head up, face the next shot. And if that one goes in, do the same thing again. If the next one goes in, do the same thing again. Just continue to do the same. Do not get down. It'll be okay. You'll bounce back. Okay. Sometimes, hey, maybe that rest of the game you don't save anymore, but then you got to get ready to bounce back the next game. Right? It does come back. As long as, you know, you don't want to just completely lose. I've seen goalies with all the talent in the world. You know, you go into practice, they're not saving, they're not letting any goals in. They get in the games, they let 1 goal, then maybe 2, and then they just completely fall apart. And you can see they're just totally out of their game because they're not able to handle that bounce back, right? That comeback, which is important as a goalie.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you're having a horrible game, I mean, I just watched the national championship game. I don't know if you watched that one, but you know, let's say like the goalies didn't have the best game. I mean, it was 18-17. That's a lot of goals, right? But the goalie makes a save right at the end, you know, and wins it for his team, right? Sometimes that's all you need. All you need is that 1 or 2 saves to get your team into the game.
You know, and I think and Maryland or Virginia as teams, they were able to keep their composure as teams, because even though the goalies, if you looked at them, I didn't see the goalie. They were letting up goals, okay? And a lot of high percentage shots too, but it doesn't matter, right? I mean, they were letting up goals. But if you looked at them, I didn't see them getting down on themselves. I saw them keeping their heads up. And I saw them being leaders out there in the field. And that's important because not only is it good for their own mindset in the game, but it's what they're telling their teammates as well. Like, hey, you can trust me still, right? Like, I trust you trust me in the goal. Imagine if a goalie's just slamming his stick against a pipe, putting his head down or crying after he lets up a goal. What's the defense and the rest of your team going to think? I mean, they're just going to be deflated, right? If they see the goalie deflated. But they weren't. I saw them keep their heads up, and I think that let the teams play a lot better on the field. They still had the confidence in their goalie. And then the Virginia goalie, you know, he made that save at the end of the game. It was phenomenal, you know, to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about remaining positive, remaining, you know, that leader, because when you look at these like slow motion plays, like you're right. Like a lot of these are just elite shots. I mean, the guy's driving from X, leaning back, like around the defender, low to high, stings a corner. Right. And you can see that an awesome shot on the television broadcast. But as a goalie, you're like, oh, I just lit up that. Sometimes a lot of people say, oh, I just let up a goal, man. I'm letting the team down. And no, that's not the way to think about it. The way to think about it is like, oh, I was on that one. He stung the corner. Great. I'm going to get the next one. Right.
Yeah. As a goalie, you got to know you're going to be in the spotlight. And if you're going to play in the position, you know you're going to fail at times. You're going to let up goals. You're going to lose games. You have to accept that. You have to accept that before you can even be a successful goalie. You have to fail. You have to let up goals. And if you're not letting up goals in practice and you're not failing, you're going to struggle later on in your career. You know, listen, I was fortunate enough early on where like I told you, I was getting shutouts and not letting up many goals, but I never let it bother me, you know, and it helped develop me still, because I always, you know, I realized, okay, I'm going to let up shots, but I just got to keep a positive attitude and really face the next shot and just go to make that save. But you know, it takes a certain mental aptitude to be able to handle the goalie position. You just got to accept what it is. You know? You're going to fail.
Yeah. And you got to be comfortable with that. And you almost got to embrace it. You know, you almost got to embrace that challenge, because if you don't have challenges in your life, like if you just go through getting shutouts every game or playing for the best teams, like you're never going to grow as a goalie or as a person. Right. So you know, when that challenge comes, when you got benched, right, it's that time like, great, this is awesome. This is my chance to overcome this challenge. And at the end of it, I'm going to be a better goalie and I'm going to be a better man.
That's right.
Yeah.
100%. I totally agree with that.
Love that. You mentioned the mental part of the game. So much of what we do, and we've touched on it in this chat, like so much of what we do as goalies is up here, is the mental game. What, when you think about mental toughness, Greg, what, how do you think about it? How do you teach goalies to be mentally tough?
It's one of the toughest things to teach goalies, but it's constantly reminding them, when you're working with goalies, that it's okay to fail. It's okay to let up shots. It's okay to let up goal. It's okay. It's that, just constantly reminding them of it. And I think that's important because some goalies just can't accept it. And I think they need to hear it over and over again. And that's important for them to be, start being mentally, tougher. For me, I mean, I don't want to say I was born with it, but I was developed too from just being tougher, as I said earlier, with playing against my older brother. He helped develop my mental toughness, right? And being able to face it. And, if he did score, which is probably pretty rare, like I wouldn't let that bother me because I'd be ready for the next one. And it helped develop me early on. But it's really constantly reminding, hey, it's okay. It's okay you let up a goal. Your form's good, your technique's good. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. Don't get frustrated, And that's hard. It's hard for a goalie to grasp because probably a majority of them don't grasp it. Unfortunately, you see a lot of goalies with all the talent, physical talent. They just, they get into that spotlight and they let goals and they can't handle it.
These dogs, I'll tell you. One second. Sorry. Okay. Got to get myself another office here. Yeah, I love what you were talking about there. So important and so tough. I don't know like the best way to think about it, but you had your senior year at Brown when you won goalie of the year, 68% save percentage, and that is just like elite. Like nowadays, if you can get 60%, right, you're an elite goalie, and that means 4 out of 10 times, guess what? Like you're picking the ball out of the back of the net, and you just got to get comfortable with that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was able to get comfortable early on. Like I said, it's about being able to bounce back from that failure.
Yep. Love it. Awesome. So you do win goalie of the year that, your senior year at Brown. Was there something that you did, differently going into that year? Or do you think it's just, the sort of progression of having, 2.5 years of starting experience under your belt at that point?
A lot of it, just experience. Again, I can't say I was doing anything different my senior year. I think, what occurred my sophomore year, the adversity I faced, to be able to, come back after, falling down, that helped, but I can't say I was doing anything different. It was just more of experience. We had a really good team. I had a great defense in front of me. Obviously that helps, when you're seeing, higher percentage shots to save. I can't say it's anything one I can, specifically I can look at that, that made a change that year. It was just a natural progression.
Yeah. On those Brown teams, I guess in your goalie game in general, were you like a real loud vocal guy? Were you like one of the leaders of the team, or were you kind of more the silent, strong, silent type of goalie?
Yeah, I was yapping away the entire time, whether it's, calling out where the ball was, but more or less calling out what was going on out, away from the ball. Mm-hmm. I had a good field sense, so I was not, I knew where the ball was. I tell everyone, but then I was basically calling out what was going on in the crease area, who's going to get the slide, but really who's going to back up slide, who's got his back, all this stuff. I was constantly chirping and expecting my defense to chirp back at me as well. And, but I was I was vocal out there. And when I really wasn't talking, I wasn't part of my game. It was, I was off my game. I was then just focused too much then on, oh no, I got to save the ball. And that's not, I let it naturally happen, right? Like, when I start thinking about, I got to save this one, I'm going to let that one in. That's going in, right? It's just focus on the ball, naturally do it, and let all your practice come into play, and you'll make the save. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah. You're a New Yorker. I don't know why I asked that question. Of course, you're loud and vocal and chirping.
And I was talking my hands too out there in the field as well.
That's right.
Italian New Yorker.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Awesome. And so you graduate from Brown and kind of go into the MLL, but also the NLL, right? How was it playing in the NLL? If we could just touch on that real quick.
Yeah, that was fun. Playing for the New York Saints. I went to a bunch of Saints games at Nassau Coliseum growing up. That was fun to be able to, play the indoor game.
As a goalie or as a field player?
I was a goalie. It didn't really suit my style much. I couldn't be as active, and I would, my coaches would tell me, "Oh, you just stand there and just block the goal." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got to move around, right? I can't just stay there. I got to attack." "No, you don't attack. You step back." Mm-hmm. "Yeah, okay, that's not really going to work out." Now I had some, I did start a few games, and I remember I was game MVP one game. I had some success, but it just wasn't for me. And I left it after a few years. But
yeah.
It was.
Yeah, field game was more your style of running around, being active, being loud, exactly. Being vocal. Yeah, love it. Well, you had quite the successful MLL career. I think. I think I read in the league's first 5 seasons. You were in the championship game every single year. That's not bad.
Yeah. That was fun. I was fortunate to play with some great teams. Great defenses as well.
Yeah.
But it was a fun experience of playing the first 5 and for 3 different teams too, which was great. First 3 with Baltimore, then Philly, and then New York.
Yeah. Any cool stories come to mind from your time playing in the MLL?
I wouldn't say as much of a cool story. It's about the transition when I got traded from Baltimore to Philadelphia. I was traded for the number 1 pick, which turned out to be Mikey Powell going to Baltimore. I was going to Philly. I'd asked for a trade because I was living in New York at the time, and commuting down to Baltimore was kind of tough. And I asked for a trade, and they were trading me to Bridgeport, which is just a ferry ride across from Long Island. And then Bridgeport wound up relocating to Philadelphia, which only got me about an hour closer to home. So I wound up going to Philly, but Philly was coming off they were 1-11. And, to be able to go from Baltimore and then go to a team that was 1-11 and then, bring that team to a championship that year, and we started off, it was 1-11 the year before. Then we started off 1-4 and then 2-5. And I just remember it was one of the best teams I've ever played on because no one got down. This is coming up, a team that, 1-11 the year before and now 2-5. And we all we just had the different mindset. Like, we're going to run the table right now. And we did. We actually ran the table. And because we just was focused. We're like, we know we're better than we're playing. And I just remember that the day before the championship game that we won that year, instead of going to practice, we went to the hotel pool and played, water polo. And it was just, we were just very relaxed. We're like, we know we're going to play well. Let's just, we practiced hard. Let's just let it take over. And, we won the championship game. And that was one of the more memorable seasons I've had playing because it was going from, a losing season the year before, the cellar, to the championship, right? And that was very fulfilling, not to say some of my other championship, the one in Baltimore that I won, fulfilling. I had great years there. It just, this Philadelphia one really stands out.
I love it. Love it. Great story. What do you say to a kid who is in the midst of a season where their team is 1-4 and their team is 2-5? Because it's tough. That's a tough spot to be in. And like the wheels can come off the wagon really quickly as a team, as guys start getting down on one another. What do you say to, a goalie in that spot?
So at the end of the day, no matter whether you're winning or losing, you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror and be able to say, did I give everything I had? I might have, failed. I'm playing well. I'm keeping my head up. I'm still letting up goals. We're still losing. But at the end of the season, if it's even a losing season, did you do everything? You got to be able to ask yourself that question. Did I do everything for this team to succeed this year? And if the answer is yes, that's okay. Then you did it. If it's no, what are you learning from that? Right? What can you take on to your next year? So even when your team's down, you're down 2-5. look at yourself in the mirror, think to yourself, what do I need to change? What do I need to do better? And sometimes it doesn't come out that year, right? Sometimes it's just the cards aren't there, right? You're playing great teams. Just the ball's not bouncing your way. It happens, right? But, you got to be able to look at yourself and say, am I giving everything I have mentally and physically? And hopefully you can answer yes. Right. But if you answer no, okay. But then what are you going to do with that, right? To take your game to the next level. That's everything in life, right? That's just not in sports. That's the one thing I would say to anybody out there with that.
Yeah, it's great coaching. Great coaching. Speaking of that, I mean, you coach goalies. I don't know if you still do it today, but there was a time when you were coaching elite goalies, including Jack Kelly, right?
Jack Kelly, I maybe only worked with him.
Who'd you work? Matt Russell.
Yeah, Matt Russell. I worked with early on. I got to know Matt Russell early on in my career. Obviously All-American, first team, one of the most talented goalies in the history of the game at Navy. Mm-hmm. I got to know Matt really well. I also had the privilege of working with Logan Shamblin at Detroit Mercy. He just graduated from Detroit Mercy, Division I program. I think he was a 3-year starter there, a bunch of all conference roles. He phenomenal and talented goalie. Worked with him while we lived in Michigan. He lived in Michigan together, got to know him pretty well. And I worked with plenty of other goalies out there. I'm actually going to see an old college buddy this weekend. He runs a program in North Carolina. I'm going to work with some of his goalies this Saturday. So I still get out there when I can. It's not as often as I would like, but I love working with goalies.
Yeah, I love it. So when you were working with Matt Russell, who I've had on the show, by the way, awesome guy. When you were working with him, what kind of, is it more technique? Like or are you working on the mental side? Like what's your style of coaching goalies? How do you go about doing that?
A little bit different. I like to lean more on the mental side of things, if anything else, because not everyone, like we said, like they're going to be goalies who attack more and might sit back. Mm-hmm. Because not everyone's built the same physically. Like I just had very quick feet and quick hands. Not every goalie has as quick of hands, so maybe they have to adjust. Maybe they have to sit back a little bit more on the goal. That's okay. But the mental side of things doesn't change, right? It's no matter what physical attributes you have to have the same, mental toughness. And that's what I just try to reinforce in goalies, especially like, hey, the one thing I open up every camp with and clinic with is what's the most important thing about goaltending? And everyone's raising their hand like, oh, it's saving the ball. I'm like, nah, that's not the most important thing. They look at me like I'm crazy. Oh, it's talking to your defense. No, that's not it. No one ever gets it, right? To me, the answer is being able to handle getting scored on. That's the most important thing about goaltending. Mm-hmm. Hands down. You're going to let goals. It's what you do when you let the goals, like we've been talking about, right? And it's like, whoa, wow. He just started off a goalie clinic saying that's the most important thing about goaltending is letting up goals. Yeah, let that click in, right? Let that click, because it isn't. You have to be able to handle it. Because it doesn't matter. If you can't handle getting scored on, then just go play attack. Go play midi. Go play B. Go play another sport. Because you're not going to be able to hack it. And so that's the main thing I teach goalies when I'm working with them.
Yeah, I even go so far as to like practice your post giving up a goal routine. Yeah. Right. Like so you have it, hardwired in your brain, like. So ball goes over your shoulder into the goal. Like I know the 4 steps I need to do, like deep breath, pick up the ball, like maintain strong body language, bring in the team, right? Or, whatever it is for you, whatever your sort of reset routine is, but then practicing that because so many goalies have just a hardwired response where ball goes over their shoulder, palms go up. They've got like poor body language. And then, the mind starts running and you can't get back into the game. So that's something you got to work on.
That's right. I teach I show every goalie, this is what I do after I let up a goal. I reach into the goal, take the ball, I hand to the official, bring my defense in. Hey, let's get the next one.
Yeah.
Go. That's it. I mean, and that's so important because again, it's not, you're not only sending a message to your own teammates and yourself, you also send a message to the other team, right? That didn't bother you, right? Imagine a team of the opposing team seeing you put your arms up in the air and your head going down. I mean, they're just like, oh man, this is open season. We got in his head, right? That you don't want to be the goalie on the receiving end of that.
Right? Totally. Yeah, totally. Well, I love it. Well, thanks, Greg, so much for coming on the show. This has been so much fun. Do you think if you had to go back and give the younger Greg Cattrano some goalie advice, what would you tell him?
Shoot more.
Shoot more. Yeah. Well, you scored the first goal in MLL history, huh? But shoot
Shoot
more.
more. No, yeah.
Stop passing. Stop passing to these attackmen. Let's go.
I passed too much when I took it over the midline. No, I'm joking. You know, it's hard. It's really hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of things I probably would have taught the young goalie, but I think, like I said, I developed my game early on, and just it was a natural progression. I've taken a lot of instruction from many coaches, listened all the time. It's hard for me to look back and say what could have I done differently. I mean, but I had a lot of good people around me, including my father, who was really my main coach in my career. He was there, that looking at me, making sure I was handling every shot, not getting down, and so forth. And he's that was a major role for me. So I don't think I would change anything or even say anything, except maybe go score more.
Score more. There we go. Let's leave it right there. I love that. You're now as most lacrosse players or lacrosse goalies do, working in the professional world. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? And then, is there any lessons that you learned as a lacrosse goalie, or just playing the sport that you use day to day in your professional career?
Well, I'm a vice president of sales for a paddle sports company right now. And obviously when you're in sales, it's very competitive. It's, pretty intense. You're always trying to win, right? So
yeah,
all that fits pretty well with my upbringing in sports, very competitive, wanting to win. So I was able to carry that into my professional career. It's funny, I had a conference call this morning with someone. We were actually talking about that, how, everything I did in sports really translated what I do in my profession, right? So it's, but that's the similarities I see, like in the position I'm in a leadership position as well as a vice president, is, being supportive, being a team player to those not only am I working with, my peers, or the people that work for me. We're only as good as the team, right? It's that's one thing. That's my management style. It's if you need support, we're here to help each other, right? It's you're not gonna be hung out to dry. Let's work the problem and win together.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing too is probably a similar mindset of doing sales deals versus lacrosse goalie, where we want to win them all, right? Like I want to make all the saves, but you're not going to. You're not going to, right? And so when you do lose a deal, or when you do give up a goal, it's like, all right, let's learn from that and move on, right?
Same exact thing. That's how I look. Same approach.
Love it. Well, I wish you many sales deals, or many virtual equivalents of running the length of the field and scoring on the opposing goalie.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is tons of fun. If you had to leave the kids out there with one last piece of advice, what would that be?
Hey, continue to work hard. Keep your head up. Face that adversity. It's okay to fail. It's okay to let up goals. Just, face the next one. If you let it in, face the next one. Just keep that head up at all times and just keep working hard.
Love it. Thank you so much.
All right.